right, I'm good to go. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to what is usually a rant I give to friends, sometimes sitting in the middle of a dealer's hall that has now been turned into an hour-long panel. This is I came up with this in November because my world was on fire, and now we're here, and the fire was figurative. So I would like I would like to really stress the ridiculous and the escapism aspect of this panel. All right, let's see here. This is a 14A panel. So if you've got young ones in the area, we are going to be discussing the concept and execution of sex, probably at some point. The word titty will probably appear at some point. Incest is going to get mentioned because we're talking about Japan. Boobs. Wait, no, I already mentioned that. So yeah, we're just 14A across the board. Not a lot of cursing, just subject matter. I also want to talk a little bit about what I mean by like power fantasy, because this isn't just Dragon Ball Z or the Dragon Ball Z variations or Hunter x Hunter. This is not just the character gets stronger and then stronger and then stronger and then stronger and fights God, because I want the escapism here. So we are talking about power fantasy in the more current state of things, a lot of isekai, a lot of fantasy stuff, where the character is probably strong enough to fight God or solve all problems with very little effort. And the interest is either watching them succeed or the fact that there are no stakes. And when I define stakes, I mean they're probably never going to fail. If they do fail, you are not stressed about it at all. You are never going to end up watching some of the show and then going, oh no, I have to watch the next episode because I need to know what happens next. You already know what happens next. Most of these shows are not surprising, or if they are surprising, it's pleasantly or weirdly, not in an OCD must read ahead sort of way. These shows are potato chips. These shows have, for the most part, have very little in the way of like beneficial calories. The other thing to keep in mind, if you don't know me, and for my friends who do, I hate everything is usually how most people engage with me, and it's not actually true. I don't hate everything. I love a lot of things, but I am hypercritical. So I often will look at things and I want a show to be internally consistent. I want characters to make sense. I want plot to make sense, even if it's only within within its own genre. One of my favorite examples of plot making sense is the majority of Pacific Rim. It's internally consistent, with the exception of the helicopter thing. I have a really hard time imagining 15 helicopters picking up something because the physics of that don't work, much like the nuclear physics don't work in that. But most of the internal physics and the internal world building of Pacific Rim are internally consistent. They make sense from the beginning to end. So most of the shows here I'm going to talk about do that, even if they are terrible shows, because they fit those base ideas. There's also a category I refer to as Oh Japan. And I refer to the Oh Japan category because if you are trying to introduce a friend who does not watch a lot of anime to anime, you have to be like, oh yeah, no, it's really, really cool. And the giant mecha shows up and they kick everybody's ass and blow up the moon. And then he falls in love with his sister. Or, yeah, no, it's great. It's really lovely and it's pastoral. And there's this really great found family vibe. And you just have to ignore the fact that they're topless at the end of every episode. So the O Japan rating is rated by Gigi's, and it literally involves things like the ratio of episode 0 to slavery, how often incest is involved, how often the female characters are framed by either butts, crotch, or boob, that sort of vibe. Other thing to keep in mind is, or other thing I already talked about is some of these have really long titles, and there's a lot of questions about why anime have really long titles. And I learned from a couple of expats, it's because Japanese bookstores do not, generally speaking, put their books facing forward, and their books are all just displayed spines out, and you don't often pick up the book and read the book on the back, the blurb on the back. So the title of the series is filling in the purpose of the blurb on the back. and it works. It works for the way Japanese folks shop for books. So that's why titles for newer stuff are getting longer and longer and longer, because they're based off light novels or books better than being turned into anime. Also, recency bias. All of this stuff is new. I'm not talking about the older good stuff. I don't need to. The majority of you on this thing have already watched the older good stuff. I don't need to tell you to go watch Escaflowne. Go watch Escaflowne. If you're a new person and you've only watched newer anime and you'd like to watch older anime, there are like a bajillion YouTube lists, my anime lists, whatever, that will tell you older stuff to watch. Just go reference that. This is really for older people like me and my friends who don't watch a lot of anime now, who are looking for some escapism without having to wade through a sea of Oh Japan, because the Oh Japan category has gotten deeper, a lot deeper. So that's what we're going to go for from here. We're going to start with what I consider one of my highlights of there are no stakes and everything is lovely. Reincarnated as a slime. There are 3 seasons. I specifically recommend seasons 1 and 2. Season 3 kind of spends a lot of time talking around a table. I think their budget got cut. This is one of the first anime that got me back into watching anime after I'd stopped for nearly 10, 15 years. It's incredibly comforting. Rimuru is the main character. He is a slime. He was a human. So the basic concept is this. Dude gets stabbed and then ends up in another world. In the other world, he is reincarnated as a slime, and he ends up with overpowered powers. His overpowered powers mean he ends up making friends, making more friends, starting a town, starting a village, turning the village into a town, then turning a town into a city, making more friends, occasionally pissing people off politically, becoming a demon, resurrecting all of his dead friends, taking over a demon lord's spot, politics, gardening, farming. It's very chill. So it really does feel like a old school RPG, Japanese JRPG, where you were building up a town after every sort of mission. So you went and did something, and then you got to bring back a thing that made your town and your people better. The world building in it is really interesting. I really like all of the characters. As a bonus, I love the fact that you can really easily read Rimuru as ace and gender fluid. He spends all of his time surrounded by women who would really like to bone him. And at no point is he interested, which is different for this genre, different for anime in general, different for this time period. Generally speaking, if you've got a male character who has female characters around him who would like to be with him, he is going to spend 90% of his time blushing, falling over, and pretending he does not know what a titty is. So Rimuru is kind of the opposite of that, where he's aware of the fact that they're interested in him and he's not interested in them, but he also doesn't even express that. It's also, for the most part, not too sexually explicit in terms of framing of female characters, despite the fact that it does have the trope of the 300-year-old child who is hypersexualized in dress. So one of the most interesting things about that is the minute Rimuru meets this character, who's the pink-haired one in the promo photo, he immediately gives her more clothes, which I thought was a nice twist on the usual thing. So when she's around him, she's often wearing clothing more appropriate for her physical age. Other things, and one of the bits that I always found the most interesting to begin with this character is Rimuru in, I think, episode 1 or 2, as a slime, ends up in a hostess bar with elves who are very well endowed, and he spends the entire time as a slime underneath a pair of breasts. And all of the other characters are having a good time, and he's sitting there going, this is nice. And I don't know about you, but I'd probably enjoy that moment too. But he's not hypersexualizing the person he's in their lap. There's nothing else gross beyond that moment. He's in a hostess club. The hosts are doing exactly what they want. Nothing further than that moment happens. And generally speaking, in anime, it's usually not that. It's usually not chill. So yeah, very little in the way of gross, a lot of fun and comedy. I really love the characters. I want to see everybody succeed. And the first 2 seasons are very solid. The 3rd season's, it's okay. Misfit of Demon King Academy. Oh my goodness, I love this show. This show is trash. It is my favorite. It is my favorite trash. It's. Oh my goodness. Specifically, season 1. We do not talk about season 2. Season 2 is not anywhere near as what I consider good. This show, I cannot tell if it was meant to be a parody of the genre or if it's accidentally a parody of the genre. But either way, I have laughed through most of the season, and it's great. You are imagine for a moment you and your wife have had a child. It's been a long, complicated labor. You were very, very concerned, but now you have a tiny darling baby boy, and you are so happy and so proud. And as you hold your delightful baby boy in your arms and look down upon him and upon your wife and say to each other, what shall we name him? And your tiny adorable brand new newborn baby child looks at you and opens his mouth and says, my name is Anos Voldigode, and I am the reincarnated Demon King. That is not actually what happens in the series word for word, but it's basically what you need to know. Uh, the main character was the Demon Lord, and 1,000 years ago, he was so sick and tired of the war between demons and humans and maybe spirits. The world building and plot not very strong in this one. He was so tired of the world and the fighting, he just went to the hero and went, okay, hero, here's the deal, you kill me, I'm gonna reincarnate in about 1,000 years, you guys have 1,000 years to figure your shit out and like not be fighting anymore. I'm gonna put up a big barrier so that none of the cultures can cross-contaminate one another. You get humans in a line, I'll get the demons, or my demons will get in a line. War is bad and I am super tired. So he dies. He comes back 1,000 years later. He wakes up newborn. We immediately we start media res with him starting in school, and he's like, I know all the answers to all the things. I am the smartest man ever because I made all of this magic. I am so good. And they're like, what's the name of the demon lord? And he goes, Anos Voldigode. And they go, no, that's not it. It's Anos something or other. I don't care. And he goes, wait, what? And so it turns out in the 1,000 years he's been dead, somebody else has gone through and changed history, and also because demons can live forever, have captured and brainwashed all of his like minions who are still alive. So he's got to figure out what's going on. While he does so, he has two female characters who are going to be the two tropes of perky tsundere and adorable white-haired cinnamon bun who could do nothing wrong. He does not sexualize them the entire time. They're just really good characters with very interesting dynamics with him, and he treats them with respect, which again, the bar is in hell. He is literally a god in this world. So this series makes Dragon Ball Z's power creep issues ridiculous. He throws a castle in the first episode, and he's like, that is a low level stake for him. I cannot stress enough that there is just no point whatsoever when he's in any real danger. The main character's parents take the fact that their brand new child ages to become a 17-year-old in the span of 6 months in stride and are an absolute delight, and he treats them wonderfully. So the actual family dynamic for in the whole series is great. And twice in the final 2 or 3 episodes, they beat the bad guy because Anos, our main character, has a fan club of girls from his school, and they sing an idol song about how cool he is. And the power of their love is what powers him up or depowers the bad guy. Twice. It is so stupid. It is so delightful. If you watched only one series out of this list, this would probably be the one I recommend. Also, if you watch the first episode, it doesn't vibe for you, it pretty much sets the tone for the whole series. So it's very easy for it to be a 1 episode test. It does not really need the 3 episode gimme for most anime tend to need. So the Japan rating on this guy is pretty straightforward. At some point when the girls get their power up, they're naked because Japan. But honestly, I don't think there's never a moment of threat of sexual assault as far as I can remember. And the main female characters are really never framed in anything weird, which is nice. Knights and Magic. This is so bad. I love this show. It is so. We've got another isekai. A lot of these series are isekai because isekai is the genre for power fantasy right now. And it really is. What if you had a mecha fan end up in the world of Escaflowne? He is an adult in a child's body, and most of the time series handle this pretty poorly. Either they completely ignore the fact it's supposed to be an adult child's body, or it gets kind of creepy. This one, it's a little interesting because I'm not entirely sure this adult had an adult mind when he ended up in a child's body. You could almost forget that he's supposed to be an adult in the way that he acts and interacts. He has a hyperfixation. His hyperfixation is mecha, and he is in a world where they have robots that you get into and pilot to fight bad things, and he is desperately going to get into a robot and fight because that's his hyperfixation. Some of the interesting things about this show, the mecha animation is really interesting, and the mecha designs are interesting. The plot is so non-existent in some ways that I could not even tell you about it. It's very, very basic kingdom building stuff. It does take some interesting turns, but it's mostly character driven. I really like the fact that our main character is a child, like he's a preteen as we start, or as the plot gets going, and he has limitations because he's a preteen. So he's smart and he's capable and he can do cool magic and he can code in his head mentally and make the mecha go faster. And he can build better mecha because he does actually have a decent understanding of how engineering works from the quote unquote real world, and he's applying it to this magical world. But he's still short. He literally cannot pilot a mecha because he cannot reach the pedals. And that is one of the things that drives him to design new things. So the main character dynamics are really great. It does have some weird vibes between him and the main female character, who's also his age. The framing of female characters, especially the adult female characters, a lot of shots are of boobs and butts. They have the sequence where the characters are literally mounted two together on a horse. It's a very compromising position. But I really liked the comedy. I really liked the childlike, dedicated, I am going to do everything I can to stop the bad guys, because if the bad guys win, they're going to invent planes. And if they invent planes, then people won't use mecha anymore, because planes are a significantly more improved design element. If we have planes, people will stop building giant robots, and that would be a tragedy. So I need to stop the bad guy from developing planes. And yeah, mecha is, I'm vaguely keeping an eye on the chat. Mecha is not my thing. I do not like mecha. This show won me over nonetheless. It's delightful. Would you like to watch a show that feels like a hug? By the Grace of the Gods is like being hugged. It feels like Kiki's Delivery Service, except even less stressful. This, I usually refer to this as I died and was reincarnated as an 8-year-old, and then I opened a laundromat. You've got a salaryman working for a black company, which is like the Japanese version of the bad guy, like a bad company. And he dies of overwork and stress and sneezing too hard, and wakes up, and the gods are like, yeah, we are so sorry. You had such a shitty life. We'd like to give you a nicer one. So we're going to reincarnate you. What would you like? And he's like, the basic stuff. And they're like, great, no problem. So he wakes up in the woods, and he spends basically 2 years living alone in the woods. He gets found by a noble family who are like, what the hell is this tiny child doing living alone? We are going to adopt him. And it's found family vibes. It is literally a noble family going, this tiny child needs to be looked after. And the interesting thing is, this 30-plus-year-old who's in the body of an 8 to 10-year-old, his mind is regressing. They explicitly state this out loud. His mind is becoming closer. He's losing his memories of being an adult, and he's becoming closer and closer to being a kid. So that's explicitly stated in the text, and it becomes more and more obvious as it goes. And that's really nice, because he very clearly didn't really have a chance to have a nice childhood. Like, he tried, his mother tried, but he had a single mother, I think. And so life was stressful. So this is adorable. He makes friends with slimes. Everyone's like, you can't do that. He's like, well, I already did. And they go, oh, it's a shock, because that's your power fantasy. He does a thing that nobody else has done before. And he literally uses his slimes to run a laundromat. I cannot believe this thing has 2 seasons, because I cannot believe this thing had 2 seasons, because it was a complete story in one. The second season is just him growing his laundromat and franchising it. This has, I almost wanted to give it 0 on the O Japan rating because there is so little everything that falls into that category. But I mean, there is the aspect of the fact that he's a 30-year-old who was going to end up probably having a romance with a character who is a child, even though he's mentally a child as well at this point. So there's that, even though they handle it really well. It doesn't give me the ick. And in a very Japanese aspect, capitalism is everything. So one of the things that you will find if you end up picking up a bunch of anime of this genre, the I can fix everything by making a business that makes all the money is a reoccurring solution. So that's your half a cat. Bofuri, I don't want to get hurt, so I'll max out my defense. This one's delightful. It is not an isekai. It is normal people who log into a VR MMORPG and log out of. They're not trapped. Maple is the main character. She's never played one before. Her best friend gets her into it, and she has never seen a stat screen, and she's kind of afraid of combat, so she just loads up her defense. All of it. She puts all of her points in defense. And the background of this is that the MMORPG that they're playing is okay, but has a lot of uneven code in the background that they are constantly trying to fix. So she keeps finding bugs accidentally. This is, min-maxing taken to the most ridiculous extreme. So Maple, as the main character, is a cinnamon bun who can do no wrong. The rest of the cast are basically the same. They do occasionally have interpersonal conflicts, and they just talk to each other and fix it. So there's never any weird misunderstandings. There are no bad guys in this. It's just the video game system. And basically, every couple of episodes, Maple gets a new power-up that is even stupider than last power-up. So initially, she just literally can't take damage, and then it gets weirder from there. The cosplay design potentials are great. I will say for the Japan rating, the first time I watched it, I didn't notice, but the second time I watched it, I was showing a friend, and I'm like, oh, there are a lot of panty shots for a show about characters who were under the age of 16, so please keep that in mind. But I do overall like it. The thing to keep in mind is the escalation of power is pretty ridiculous. So Maple ends up a god. It has a literal god cheat mode. She also turns into a giant alien beast, but my favorite is she has a giant mecha suit of armor upgrade, but she also has sheep mode, and at one point in the background they combine them, and I need season 3 so I can see mecha sheep, because she can't take damage in the sheep because she's covered in cotton, but she's now a laser sheep. I love the show. It's so stupid. You really need to watch this show. It's great. Delicious in Dungeon. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I feel like everybody knows it. We just had the music video, but if you have not watched it, watch Delicious in Dungeon. This has a 0 rating on my O Japan setting. I have not finished the season, so maybe that would change. I'm about halfway through. I know more about the future of it than I've actually watched. I kept putting this one off to watch with my roommate, and Leslie and I cannot get enough of it. This is so good. It's so good, and it's really hard to encapsulate why. You get phenomenal characters who all have very, very well-developed backgrounds and understanding of themselves and issues and beliefs, and each one of them bouncing off of one another actually lets you see those things. Very little of it, almost all of it, is show not tell in a really, really delightful way. The dub is phenomenal as I'm checking the subs. Almost everything I'm showing here is available dubbed. I basically only watch dubbed with Leslie, so I think everything that I've listed here is all but one show is available dubbed. So there is so much character growth. It's just so wholesome. And yeah, I there is not a single O Japan thing that's actually present in the show. There's a lot of it in the fanfic, but we don't talk about that. That's a different panel. A very different panel. Saint's power is omnipotent. Look, we get a female lead character. Woo! We also get a middle-aged protagonist. So the Saint's power is one of the chillest on this series. Not quite as chill as Laundromat, but very, very chill nonetheless. This is what if they did a summoning ritual to get them the hero to save the world, and they summoned the girl in the apartment below you and you got caught at the same time? So Say wakes up in a magical circle with a 16-year-old girl, her neighbor that she knows, who is told, "You are the saint. You are going to save us." And then they look at the older woman and go, whoops. Sorry, we can't send you back. I mean, we might be able to send you back in like 6 months from now when the person who summoned you is not in a coma. But yeah, sorry. We're gonna take the saint and train her to help us save the world, and we'll just get you set up. And Saint Say is the main character, is like, this sucks, but I'm going to make the best of it. And one of the reoccurring themes that you'll find in Japanese media is the idea of being idle is no bueno. You do not sit and laze. It is not considered a good character trait. So you have to work. That's a theme that happens in By the Grace of the Gods Laundromat anime. It happens here as well. She is driven to do something. So she ends up working at the pharmacy or the apothecary, and whoops, it turns out she actually is the saint, and the other girl was an accident. Whoopsies, now she's up to saving the world. Her interactions with all the male characters are pretty nice. There are some aspects of the like Japanese tropes, so it's a little less of the sexism and more in like the character who's fairly queer coded is also kind of an asshole and very handsy with her, and that's kind of frustrating, but also very, very Japanese media. But Say as a character makes really interesting, straightforward choices that make sense with the information she has and the power that she has at her hand. And the way they handle the like villain is also really interesting, and I don't want to spoil it, but the thought process that the villain has makes a decent amount of sense within the tropes that we have. So I liked this one. If you're looking for a romance, this is basically the only one on the show or in the panel list. So pardon me. I give this one a shot. I also liked cosplaying from it. Woohoo! Also, yeah, she actually gets to have female friends, and that doesn't often happen in shows with a female protagonist. All right, this is the one that doesn't have a dub yet. This is also not finished, so I'm only reviewing it based on the first 5 or 6 episodes. This show is so stupid, and I love it. It's so funny. It works best if you know dating sims, because it's all of the tropes of a dating sim. Pardon me. I have that in-between cough I can't figure out. So this is an otaku dad. An old school, was growing up watching Astro Boy dad, ends up in his daughter's dating sim. And he is aware that he's in his daughter's dating sim. And he knows about 5 things about dating sims. And he's the villainous. So he's like, I guess I have to be a villainous in this dating sim. I'm not entirely sure what else I'm supposed to do. But he cannot actually successfully be a villainous because he is a dad. And he literally has a pun off with one of the other characters. He is a dad. He is a like 50-year-old dad who is going to be his dadliest best. And he is going to parent the hell out of every other teenager in the room. And because of the game mechanics, every time he is dadding at them, every time he is trying to be super, super polite, like his businessman mode, or every time he's trying to like translate his dad speak, it just comes through in the game speak as being like the best possible aristocratic manners. So every time he's around somebody pulling out a dad moment, they all essentially have a romance flag. And he's just like, he meets the trope of these is always like the villainous is at school and meets the commoner girl who has a very specific type of magic that's allowed her to come into this school that's only for aristocrats, and they're going to meet at the beginning of the first day, and then the villainous is going to say terrible things and make the girl cry, and the girl is going to go meet one of the love interests. So this is the trope. This is the high schoolers going to a haunted cabin trope. Like it's established. So he meets the new girl, the commoner girl, and he realizes, oh, I know what the scene is supposed to be. I know what the seed is supposed to be. I'm supposed to be rude to her. And he's in the process of trying to figure out how to be rude to her, and he can't. And so he tells her, you commoner who have come here to this school of only the elite, of only the aristocrats, of only the blood, you have come here, your parents. So there's this whole moment of pause, and he looks at her over his fan and goes, must be so proud of you. It's so adorable. I just want to pinch his cheeks. So yes, I highly recommend this one if you're looking for a comedy run. If you're familiar with dating sims or the genre itself, it's very, very delightful. Also, his family is aware of the fact that he physically is in a coma right now in Japan, but mentally is in her video game. And so mom and daughter are literally like debating on theories of how to best help him out and are actually active in helping dad along through the game. Another dating sim pastiche. My next life as a villainess. All roads lead to doom. This is kind of like the original. So you don't need to know much about dating sims to watch this one. This is usually the one I recommend for folks. Katarina class ends up, or the character who Katarina was, ends up in her favorite dating sim. And she knows that if she is not careful, she is going to die because she is the villainess. She essentially comes to this awareness when she's a tiny child. So she spends the next 10 years of her life making sure that she doesn't do all the things that would make her the bad guy. In the process, she ends up making friends with the entire cast. The thing is she doesn't realize she's doing that for the most part because she is dumb as a sack of bricks. In fact, that might be insulting bricks. And I hate everything. I hate dumb characters. I hate characters who make dumb choices and who are dumb in general. Like, I usually find them very frustrating. Bakarina is the best thing ever. She is greater than sliced bread. I will cheer her on to the end of days. She makes it work. Partially because she's genuinely charming, partially because her stupidity is often self-inflicted choices that only badly impact her and not the people around her. So it makes sense that everybody around her spends a lot of time supporting her and doing their best to make sure that she's okay. It's genuinely comedically funny. I love all the characters, and you really want to see everybody succeed. There's a really great humor with Katarina having an inside-out movie-style council inside of her head that are all her different personalities trying to give her advice, except they also do not have two brain cells to rub together. As a bonus, I really love reading Katarina as a romantic or ace because she is surrounded by people who are absolutely all in love with her because she's done all of the things that in the game are what make them fall in love with other characters. She's been the one to do them instead, and she's completely unaware of this. So I'm a big fan of the idea of her ending up with a harem because we never get good harem endings for female characters. On the other hand, by second season, we get some pretty heavy-handed incest stuff, and it's less great, so your mileage will vary. So I kind of stop at season 1. Season 2 it's fine. It's just her stepbrother is gross. Here's another comedy one. I cannot believe how good this is. It's so stupid. I love it. It's so dumb. The Genius Prince's Guide of Raising a Nation Out of Debt, which I must note is different than How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. I've watched both. Realist Hero made me angry. Genius Prince's Guide is like, I liked it so much I immediately watched it a second time through so I could show the duck to Leslie. It has the main character who is in charge of a kingdom which is in a grievous amount of debt, and all he wants to do is chill. He wants to relax. He wants to take his time. He wants to sit with his girlfriend and hang out, and he can't because he's a savant. And he keeps ending up having to fix problems. So this one is pretty heavy on the politics, but the politics are not particularly deep. So it's interesting in the fact that every time he fixes one problem, it creates a different problem, and that problem makes sense from the previous problem. There is really good dynamic between him and his love interest, even though there's some interesting plot aspects about that. Usually in this sort of thing, his love interest would probably be some sort of slave for everything else that happens with the background of these characters, and they don't go that route, which is, the bar is in hell, but it's nice. It is a series with a ridiculous quantity of female characters who wear various amounts of clothing that is skin tight. There is an entire episode where the resolution is his sister gives a rousing speech about commerce to I can't remember where the city is supposed to be, but yeah, to a city of merchants. She just talks them into leaving and avoiding a war because commerce. It's very, very silly. It's very, very baby's first idea of what Les Mis might look like. But I did really enjoy the comedy. The it's very, very rapid fire, and the dub is quite solid. So no stakes, no question whatsoever of what's going to happen. You just have a ridiculous set of characters working through ridiculous things. And I liked it. All right. Reverse isekai, not really fantasy. Ya boy Conming. Absolutely delightful. Our main character is Conming, who is a strategist who dies in ancient China on his deathbed with regrets. So he wakes up in his young 20-year-old body. We're going to go with 20-year-old body in Japan, in Harajuku, on Halloween night. And he thinks he's in hell. And he walks into a bar after getting slightly, possibly very drunk, and sees a girl singing dressed up like a devil. And he decides that she must be a siren of hell. And the next day, she finds him hungover in the alleyway of the bar and realizes that this cosplayer thinks he's traveled through time and probably needs some help. They become fast friends. He decides to become her manager to make her the top pop singer of Japan, and essentially Sherlock Holmes his way through the entire series to outwit and outmaneuver every other manager to make her number one in a series of weirdly escalating sequences, including a rap battle, which he wins by reciting Chinese poetry in Japanese. It's great. The dynamic between Conming and Aiko, the main female singer, is delightfully sexless. There's nothing. Like, we get an O Japan moment where she is in the shower and we get the long camera moment, camera pulling over her body because we have to do that. But there is absolutely no moment where he is interested in her, and she might maybe have a crush. You could read it that way, but there's nothing beyond like maybe a mild crush. He really does read as an older brother to her, and we don't get that a lot. We very rarely will get male-female characters in the sort of dynamic where they get to be friends, and their friendship is incredibly strong. It's also a really fun look at the music industry in Japan, being realistic without being horrifically depressing. And the music's fantastic. The music's absolutely fantastic. It's also 12 or 13 episodes. Oh, actually, with the exception of Reincarnated as a Slime, everything I've mentioned so far has been 12 episode or 13 episode runs, because I like short slices of life these days. I like things that aren't going to completely consume me. And generally speaking, the way that the animation system runs now, they just mostly do 12 episode shows because they want to put out all of the things to make all of the money, and they don't actually care about the health of their animators. So yes, give Ya Boy Conming a try. Also, the OP is utterly fantastic. If you get nothing else, go download the OP. It's hilarious. Bocchi the Rock. Another one that does not fit the vibe of anything else of the series, but if I do not talk about it, I will regret it. One of the best things I've watched in the last couple of years, right up there with Delicious in Dungeon. Actually, probably I liked it better than Delicious in Dungeon, but personal taste. 12 episodes, a complete story in those 12 episodes, but there is a second season. I'm really hoping the second season will be as good as the first. This is one of the kindest, most accurate depictions of anxiety I have ever seen. It is incredibly phenomenal in the way that you get Bocchi's friends interacting with her anxiety. It plays with the fourth wall and it breaks animation rules consistently to help showcase what her anxiety feels like, which is why I've got these two screen caps here. These are both moments of, like, in, I think, the second episode of Bochi having essentially an anxiety attack, and how it's depicted through the animation. You love every single member of the cast. Everybody has good reason for what they're doing, why they're doing. Their dynamics make sense, and the music is just great. I just love the show. I don't want to spoil it because it's kind of hard to spoil, but it's also like just something you need to watch. You need to watch Bochi be a teenager in high school thinking that if she learns to play the guitar really good, she'll make friends, forgetting that she needs to do something besides play the guitar in her closet, and not realizing that there is a second step, and ending up through random happenstance joining a band. And the band also is called Rubber Band. It's Kosoku Band, and it's Rubber Band. And I just think that pun is the best thing ever. I gave this a half GG for Japan rating, and it might actually get a 0. I haven't rewatched it long enough to know whether or not there's, like, I don't think we end up with a bathing suit episode. I don't think the girls ever discuss the size of their boobs, and I don't think there's no sexualization of the characters otherwise, so we might actually have a 0 in the Japan rating. But I'm not positive on that, so I gave it a half GG. All right. This is my guilty pleasure. This is trash. I make no excuse for the fact that this is 100% trash. But it's my trash, and I get to finish this talk with my trash. Please note the Japan rating. It probably should have a second another GG. It's bad. So there are 2 Demon Lord retries. We are talking about the original Demon Lord retry, not the new Demon Lord retry R. We do not talk about Demon Lord retry R. It's terrible. It's god awful. Don't even try it. Demon Lord retry, I started watching. The scale, I think I stopped the scale at 4, but honestly, for how bad the show is, it probably should have been 5. And it should also get 5 GG, because it makes everything else look less bad in comparison. I started watching the show because I'd seen a screen grab or a GIF of the main character who, for reasons I cannot understand, is never in the front of any of this cover art. So that's the guy in the black trench coat in the bottom left corner there. He's our main character, and he looks like Sung from the Turks, and I am a cheap date, and I was going to watch the show to find out why this character looks like Sung from the Turks. And then I watched the whole show, and I was like, I could never show this to anybody else. And then I watched the show again, like, okay, this is pretty bad, but it's also pretty funny. And then I watched it a third time and said, fuck it, okay, we're going to show it to my roommate, just with a lot of warnings. So this show is about our main character, whose name is immediately escaping me. I don't remember names. If you know me, you know I'm terrible at names. Our main character ran a video game that was cyberpunk, essentially, and he ran the head guild. He was the guy who ran basically Shinra in the cyberpunk video game. And he ran it for a good 10 years. And he had all the NPCs. He had an entire cast of game characters that helped him run this game for other people. Now he has to shut the game down. So the usual trope of this is he shuts the game down, and he's supposed to wake up in the game. And he's trapped in the game, except not. So we have an actual human character who is playing the video game character of himself, who shuts the video game down and then wakes up in a fantasy world in his video game character body. He has admin privileges, so he has access to all of his video game bullshit, essentially, from his cyberpunk game, but he's now in a full-on fantasy world. He is a grumpy, middle-aged dude who acts like a war vet, essentially, with a soft spot. He smokes consistently. He's just grumpy and gruff all the time. And his interaction with everybody is just, every single character he interacts with is a weird pastiche / caricature of what their trope is, to the nth degree. So this can be fun. Like the blonde in the very center is an adorable cinnamon bun who, has been badly treated all her life and cannot do anything wrong and is just adorable child he needs to look after. Priestess on the left is the very, very typical tsundere. Priestess on the right is the character who acts like she's a sadist but secretly wants to be. I guess she's tsundere times 20. I don't know. They're all ridiculous caricatures. The reason I'm like this show is trash is because it also involves the doctor character who is back to back with our main lead. She is literally in text obsessed with little boys, literally, and also like in a like heavy breathing sort of way. She is also also a sadist and will also that's also leaned on in the series. There is and I might goof on presenting this, so apologize. I try to translate the Japanese badness into something a little bit more decent. But there is a male character who should be a female character who dresses and wants to be a woman, who is treated by most people who know like she's male, but treated like a female for everybody who doesn't know. So essentially trap, like in the terrible transphobic way. And that character could maybe be done nicely, but they're not. They spend their entire time talking about how much they want to ride dick, like nonstop. It is all they do is make penis jokes. They're thankfully a minor part of the show, but they're the part that makes me wince the most when I talk about the show. But I like the rest of it enough to be like, okay, this is trash. I need to warn you about this trash. Oh yeah, also this show does not end this season, but later on in the books, and I think potentially in the second season, which we do not talk about, is going to go for the child who is the daughter and is being raised by our main character wants to marry him. We are going to end up with a Usagi drop situation. We do not talk about this. The first season of Demon Lord Retry is a nice encapsulated story where nice things happen, and you like all the characters for the most part. One of the other things that I find really interesting with this is that there's a plus size character, like a true fat woman, who is treated well. And I could not tell you that happens in any other show that I have watched this last 4 years. She has a terrible name. She's Madame Shrimpfly, Butterfly, Shrimpfly. Yeah, she has terrible. Everybody has terrible names in the show. But she is considered to be one of the most beautiful women in the town, an incredibly popular socialite with power who is treated with respect by everybody in the entire show at all points. There is not a single comment about her weight or her physique that is negative. I don't get that in regular media, so that was nice. It's a small thing, but hey, it was nice. So yeah, this is trash. If you liked Overlord, you'll probably like this. This is like Overlord with less torture. Which is to say there's zero torture. I liked it, but it is trash. It is trash. All right. As we wrap up my last 8 minutes, other shows that you should give a chance to. If like didn't want to talk about the big guys. So again, these are still things that have very little stakes, things that are chill and will let you just relax while you're watching them. The Apothecary Diaries is Sherlock Holmes, but female lead with some mild romance set in ancient China and the Inner Palace. Zenshu is not finished yet, but is beautifully animated. The tone is a little all over the place for me. I'm not entirely sure about it yet, but I really love the first couple of episodes, and is a animator who ends up in the world of her favorite movie and is trying to make sure that the movie doesn't end as a tragedy, which it originally did. Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. What is it like to live forever or nearly forever? And finding out what humanity means to somebody who doesn't have it. Absolutely beautiful. Spice and Wolf is a classic. They've redone it recently. I haven't actually watched all of it. I've just watched a bit, but everybody I know recommends it to me. Natsumi's Book of Friends, same thing. It's entirely vibes. It's very, very chill. It's about spirits and a character interact with them. Again, something I haven't watched, but something that's been recommended to me as a chill thing to watch forever and ever and ever and ever. Faraway Paladin. Really interesting world building, really interesting gods. So if you like world building and you're looking for a show that's at least got some drama to it, really nice fantasy, otherwise fairly chill. Has a very Ghibli vibe to it. Like if you were to actually split the difference between Kiki's Delivery Service and Princess Mononoke, you probably end up at the Four-Way Paladin. Wisteria Wand and Sword. Very, very pretty. Not my favorite thing. I kind of ended up watching it by skipping through things because I didn't super love the Shonen Bros bully protagonist, but that's really, really, really prettily animated. Tsukimichi Moonlight Fantasy. It's really hard to describe. Really hard to describe, but I find it delightful. It is very similar vibes to Reincarnated as a slime. Without being a slime, you still stay in the main character. And honestly, it's really hard to describe. I just really, really like that one. So if you liked anything else I've recommended, give that one a shot. Villainless Level 99 is not available dubbed, which makes me sad. It is a self-aware villain. I'm the overpowered villain, I'm the main character story. Completely done deadpan. Like, imagine if Wednesday Addams ended up being the main character of a villainous story. Stuck in school and dealing with people who do not understand that she actually is stronger than everybody else. Welcome to Demon School. Iruma-kun is adorable. It's just adorable. It is a human who gets adopted by a demon to be his granddad, and he has to pretend to be a demon and go to school. And I just want to pinch his cheeks. Campfire Cooking Another World. The guy's got Amazon grocery delivery while in a fantasy world and spends his entire time making delicious food for a giant wolf god who's kind of a jerk, but also adorable. Pure Moon Empire is a different comedy take on My Next Life as a Villainess. Has even less plot, but I enjoyed it. I also think that one's missing a dub. Endo and Kobayashi Live, probably one of my favorite things on this list here. Does not yet have a dub, but I'm desperately hoping it will. It is two radio show hosts who are best friends who will eventually end up in a romance, watching or playing a dating sim together and able to communicate with the characters in the dating sim, specifically with the fiance of the lead villainess. And since they know that the villainess isn't actually evil and is actually a tsundere and is actually going to be possessed by a dark god and they need to help her, they guide him through the process of understanding his fiance, making friends, and saving her from herself. And it's comedy gold. I really loved it. The dub is great. The dialogue is great. And again, all of these things have very little in the way of stress, so you can watch them and then forget that they happened and still leave with a happy, fluffy feeling. And I am now at 3 minutes to 9, so I managed to time this pretty damn good. Thanks for joining! If you want other recommendations after I've given you all these, DM me, I guess. Because yeah, I could keep going, but these were the top of the list. After this, things get trashier. Things get trashier after this. Well, thank you guys so much for joining for the panel. I appreciate it.